All right. So I finished God of War Ragnarok.
Oh, wow, you finished it already, Jesus.
Yeah, I powered through that fucking thing.
You must have been grinding to get through it that quickly.
And I won't say that I was enjoying all of that experience, but we will get to that. First of all, where are you at? Because I'm going to be conscious about spoilers and stuff like that, so I just want to...
I'm not that fussed. Maybe 10, 15 hours in.
Okay, I mean, sadly, that's maybe like a third of the way through this fucking thing. This is a long game. Let me say that. I'm pretty sure I've spent more hours on Elden Ring, but God of War Ragnarok feels like a much longer game. I'll start with this, right?
Yep.
There is no doubt in the fact that if you want that AAA style production of video game, Santa Monica Studios and Sony first party studios, Naughty Dog, that sort of thing, you know, they're as good as you get in that field. They are industry leading in terms of technical proficiency, artistic vision and direction, motion capture, voice acting. Obviously, voice acting is a different thing, but like, you know, across all of those spectrums, yeah, they are unbelievable. And they create these truly just cinematic experiences that you know, border on being like a kind of interactive medium, you know, something like you're kind of playing Avatar. It's unbelievable how these games look and how you can just see across as you play through this game, because God of War Ragnarok, like God of War 2018, if you didn't play them, they play a lot like a kind of one-shot sequence throughout, where you know, you're just kind of constantly behind the shoulder of Kratos and you experience this game, this story in real time. And there are a few bits where they'll do kind of like trickery to get around the fact that they need to kind of load in the next scene or whatever the case may be. But the way they do all that sort of sleight of hand stuff, if you're looking for it, you can see it. But if you just kind of switch off and just let this game take you on that journey, you don't notice any of that. And from that aspect, and in terms of just, you know, again, the production and all the shit that's going on in the background, this is a very, very impressive game, which should come as no surprise, because God of War 2018 is a very impressive game for very similar reasons as well. So from that aspect, there isn't really much I can complain about here. And certainly I think that while the story is far too excessive in terms of getting from plot beat to plot beat, I did overall enjoy the story and what they were telling in this kind of continuing the structure of this relationship between Atreus and Kratos, and the character arcs that we get for these two characters, but also the way that they characterize other kind of true and tested characters in across different mediums now. Like, basically, Odin's characterization in this game, he comes across like he's come off the set of Goodfellas, or he's like a fucking 1920s Chicago gangster. Like, literally at one point he says to someone, "Get out of here." It honestly, I think my biggest complaint with this game is that I didn't get enough of Odin, because I think his characterization is fucking hilarious, and I'm so glad that they just went in such a left field manner with him. And I think across the board, most of the characters, they all have like their own unique personalities, traits, character arcs. Like, really, there isn't anyone that I'm just like, I don't care for them. So all of that is fine. I will say the one person who I have the biggest issue with is Atreus, and that's because this game wants to spend a lot of time with you playing as Atreus. And unfortunately, those times are the times where this game grinds to a screeching halt. Because, like, across the board, and, you know, God of War 2018 does this as well, other AAA games do this as well, you will have a small kind of action sequence that happens, and then you'll have, like, a walking bit. And during that bit, two characters are having a whole bunch of exposition and dialogue. about whatever's relevant to what's going on with them, or maybe something else. And it can be a combination of a couple of things. It could just be killing time, or just kind of killing that empty space. It could be something that's actually relevant to the strengthening between the characters, or whatever the case in terms of the story. Or it could just be excess fluff that doesn't mean anything, but just we need to have something being said at all times, because otherwise, oh no, the player might lose their attention, might lose their focus, and then look at their phone or something. And it's so egregious with the Atreus sections, and there's particularly, and I imagine you probably got to this bit already if you're about 10 to 12 hours in, but there's a bit where you're on the back of, basically it's a yak.
Yeah.
And this section goes on for about 90 minutes to 2 hours, and you'll have like a small action sequence. And here's the other issue as well: Atreus and his combat isn't that particularly interesting. Certainly when you've just come from fucking playing as Kratos, Atreus just feels very feeble and not, it just isn't as fun to play as Atreus. It's as simple as that. So you have that anchor weighing you down already, combined with you've got minutes, like actual minutes of exposition between, not even between action sequences, just between like picking up a piece of fruit, and then you've got more minutes of like talking that isn't necessary, to then picking up another piece of fruit. And it's about 8 hours into the game, maybe a little bit less, and I was generally thinking, I don't think I want to play this game anymore, because this is not actually any fun. I get that you're trying to tell like this part of the story, but there is a way that you can do this in a much more concise fucking manner and not extend this fucking thing by 2 hours. Like, this is a 30-minute sequence that's been stretched over 2 hours. It really is, and it's kind of is like the big thing with the game overall, I guess, is that 2018 God of War is a game that has a story to tell, but the story never gets in the way of the game. Maybe there's one or two sections, maybe you could make that argument, but for the most part, and certainly from what I remember playing that game, that never felt the case. God of War Ragnarok is constantly and consistently hampered by the fact that it's so desperate to tell this story that everything else gets sacrificed in terms of you playing the game, the pacing of the game, and all other manner of things, that by the time you finally get to like the last stretch of the game where things actually start to pick up, and I do think that the final stretch of the game is really, really solid. Now for me, I was about 20 to 22 hours in, and the reason for that is after about 12 to 15 hours, I went, I'm done with this fucking thing. I want to get to the end of this game. Anything that came across as like a side quest, I did not care about. There is a bit...
Oh, I really enjoy the side quest so far.
There is a bit in next to one of the... what the hell is the name of the dwarf's house? Is it Sidnell?
It's Sindri.
Sindri, yeah. So outside of Sindri's house, there's once you get to a certain point, there is a squirrel that appears, and he needs help with something. And every time I would run from the gateway to Sindri's
Is it Conker
house,
from Conker's Bad Fur Day?
it was not Conker, no. Every time I would run from like the gateway to Sindri's house, he would be to the left saying, "Excuse me, Mr. Kratos, can you help me with something?" Like, fuck, did I ever help him with anything? I just, no. I did not want to get to it, because again, I think I did maybe like one or two of the side quests, and the same thing would happen. And it's just the game, like any section of the game, come down to the same thing. You do a small action sequence, there's a bunch of talking, there's maybe a puzzle sequence, and right, here's another thing as well, right? The puzzles in this game, I refuse to call them puzzles, because there's not actually any thought process that you need to complete a puzzle. It's find a thing that you need to look at in the environment and throw an axe at it. If the axe doesn't work, throw the blades at it. If that doesn't work, throw an arrow first, then throw the blades at it. That's it. That's every single puzzle in this game. And they are purely just there, obviously, to break up the pace. But the problem is there's no pace to break up, so they just become incredibly tedious. And on top of all of that, this is the worst game I've come across in some time for not even giving you a moment to actually think about what the puzzle is before an NPC says, "Hey, have you thought about try doing this or try doing that?" And like, I thought
Mimi is a bastard for that.
I thought after Fee in Skyward Sword that we as a society had understood that, you know what, maybe we can actually just let the player figure this shit out for themselves. But it's such a case of, look, God of War 2018 sold untold millions, and Sony obviously were banking on a big winner this year because there's not been that much in terms of first party. This is not exclusive to PlayStation 5, but there's not been like a lot of kind of big PS5 style games this year. Obviously, Elden Ring goes without saying. But you can just tell that like this game was focus tested to the nth degree to make sure that at no point is a player going to get stuck or get frustrated. And, you know, because Mark Brown, Game Maker's Toolkit, excuse me, he has a really good video about Ragnarok, and he has about this specific thing in terms of the puzzles and how the NPCs are just constantly there telling you how to basically do everything. And one of the barometers that we have now that we didn't have back in, you know, like the early part of the 21st century is trophies and achievement points. And, you know, like you can use games and Steam achievements and whatever else to see like, hey, what is the point? What is the kind of cutoff point here where people just stop playing games? And developers and publishers will use those to kind of determine like, right, well, what did we do wrong here? You know, we want people to play these games and see them through and not, you know, refund them and return them or whatever. And so there is no room for you to stretch your legs and even look at these puzzles, which again, like, you know, I've been playing a game at the moment called The Curse of the Golden Idol, which is like a real sort of old school point and click style game. And that game, let me tell you, does not hold your fucking hand at all. But it's also one of those games where it's like, no, fuck you. It's for you to figure out these puzzles. You know, that is the point. It's for you to flex your brain and feel smart about figuring out. And, you know, some of the puzzles in that game, I feel like a fucking genius when I get to the end of it. Even with any of the puzzles in God of War Ragnarok that I was able to solve out on my own before Mimir had a fucking chance to open his mouth, there's no intuitive, there's a word. I don't need to be intuitive about figuring out these puzzles. There's no like surveying and kind of understanding the environment to know how like this will work with that. Everything is there in front of you. Maybe sometimes you might need to walk like to the next part of an area to see that, oh, right, there's the thing I need to throw out. But like that is about as far and as challenging as the puzzles get in this game. So it's like, if you're going to go to this effort of doing this thing to break up pace that isn't there to begin with, and you're just going to tell me what to do, why even fucking bother with the puzzles then? Like, you're not actually doing anything here other than ticking off a box that says, right, this is a big action-adventure, third-person, over-the-shoulder style game, AAA budget, blah, blah, blah. Right, we need to have puzzle sections at some point, right? Yep, that's there, tick them off. That's what it feels like. It's so not necessary. So, with all that said, you know, Ragnarok came out. A bunch of different publishers and a bunch of different publications gave this game 10 out of 10. Said it's one of the best games of the year. I do not see in any way, shape, or form how that could be possible. For a start, it's nowhere near as good as God of War 2018 in any aspect. Any areas where it's as good as 2018, it's simply as good as, but there are many areas where it's inferior in terms of its pacing.
It looks better. Come on.
I mean,
you can't say that it doesn't look better.
It looks good, but like...
No, but it looks better.
Yeah, it looks... obviously, it's one of the best looking games of the year. I don't like dispute this. It looks great, but did that in any way enhance my enjoyment of this game over 2018? No, it didn't, because there were so many other things that dragged it down. So yeah, sure, like it looks great at points. The game does have moments where it did grab me, like the bit at the start where your wolf dies. Like within the first couple of minutes, I was like, I'm hooked into this. I even felt, you know, a little bit of emotion, probably because I have a fucking pet, and like I you know, having had a near-death experience with them this year, I certainly feel that pain. There's something that happens later on with that, where you come back to that, and it's like, oh, that's actually some really good storytelling. They kind of reference something from earlier on and bring it back. That was really cool. And there's a few things like that throughout the game where it's like, yeah, all right, we know what we're doing here, but just overall, it's just a very excessive version of a game that I've already played. And I like 2018. I liked it a lot, but I didn't need just more of that game. And it feels like they were so just beholden to continue telling this story that, like, oh, right, well, this game needs to be 30, 40 hours long to tell this story. I don't think it needed to be. And just, I got to the end of it, and it was purely just a case of, like, I will finish this thing because I'm now kind of pot committed, and I will just see this thing through to the end. But I can't in any way see how someone would say this is like the best game, or even like one of the best games of the year. It's a perfectly solid AAA production style game, an action adventure game. It ticks all the boxes that you expect for that sort of thing. If you're someone who isn't, you bought your PS5 and you might buy like 2 or 3 games a year. You buy FIFA, maybe you buy God of War, and you buy Call of Duty and God of War. Like, if that's kind of your jam, yeah, this is going to be for you. Like, you're going to have a good time with this. I don't know whether it was to say that like my standards are a little bit higher, or that I've played other games this year that just simply interest me for other reasons. Who knows what it is? But this is what I was just talking about, Evil West being like the good side of the 7 out of 10. This for me is the bad side of a 7 out of 10.
It feels more than a 7 out of 10 to me. But
it really, look, I mean, when you get to the end of the game...
That's just a difference of opinion, though, I think.
Well, of course. When you get to the end of the game, maybe you'll feel like that. But for me, I found this thing a fucking slog to get through.
Yeah, I can't really disagree with a lot of what you said, because it's how it made you feel rather than anything that's like technically wrong or any style of, like the puzzle thing, I guess, is a bit annoying. Like I say, it's Mimir, like he'll always, give you a hint or something, but that didn't bother me too much. Like, I'm not trying to, I just feel very tired lately, Mark. I really do. And like characters saying, oh, if you do this, you can blah, blah, blah. I'm happy with that. I'm fine. I don't have to spend ages looking at a puzzle if I want to go and do all the side quests and find all the chests and get all of the items and stuff and upgrade my weapon and do my tree. I quite like the Atreus stuff with the arrows and it's a different style of gameplay, and it kind of breaks it up nicely for it. But all of the things that you said, like, it's just how it made you feel versus how it made me feel. I think we're playing the same game, we're having the same experiences, but I think we're probably just looking for different things. So I completely respect all of that, but I'm enjoying it a lot more than that. So yeah.
Yeah, and that's fair enough. I definitely think for me, and I think I even said this at the time with 2018, that there were so many tropes of AAA design that I was starting to get sick of at the time, and I'm even more sick of now. Like, for one thing, climbing in this game, we're at the point now where environments are so like technical and complex in terms of their geography that, like I was playing a bit of Tomb Raider Anniversary off of the back of a podcast we did last week that will come out soon towards Christmas. And, like that game with the climbing, you can see there are clearly like elements and ledges and bits and pieces that Lara can climb on, but they're not telegraphed with like actual fucking arrows pointing at this is the thing that you can climb on, in a way that with Ragnarok, like anything that's a climbable surface has, some sort of like kind of like Nordic symbols and whatnot to clearly telegraph this is what you can climb on, which again comes back to like the developers and the testers or whatever wanted to make sure that like there's no part in this game where you get stuck more than say a minute. So
good, and I appreciate that, but
for me,
I don't want a fucking From Software game to play through where I have to really overthink everything I'm doing. I like, there are games that exist like that, but I just want to play this game.
Yeah.
And I want to enjoy it and have fun with it and enjoy the characters. And the characters are fun.
But if you're
and I do like the dialogue. And I'm going to help that fucking squirrel, by the way. That's going to be my best mate, Mark.
I'm not talking about the fucking dialogue, though. I'm talking about the fact that if you're going to go to all this trouble to make this really beautifully crafted looking environment that Kratos and Atreus can climb across, which again, you know, the simple fact is it's just a fucking linear path anyway. If you're going to do that and then fucking just spray like arrows all over it to say this is the one direction you can climb on, it's like, why fucking bother then? And you know, other games are guilty of this as well.
So people don't spend fucking half an hour in an area trying to find the one patch that they need to climb on. To me, that's not a problem. To you, it is. Again, that's why I didn't jump in too much when you were talking about the game, because a lot of the things that you were describing as problems, to me, I'm just like, I got no beef with that. In fact, I like that because it helps me out to play this game, and I have no problem whatsoever with it being telegraphed. But if you need a challenge from your video games, if you don't want it to be that way, like, that is also a completely legitimate viewpoint, I would say.
It's not so much about having a challenge, because, you know, challenge can come in different forms. It's more just about, like, I don't need the game to just fucking literally drag me by the hand from beginning to end.
Dragnarok.
It's pretty much it, you know?
Yeah.
Like, give me fucking a couple of minutes to just look at environment. And hey, here's the thing as well, right? It's 2022. If I'm stuck in a bit of environment and I don't know what I'm doing, there are multiple fucking guides out there, because, like, here's a thing, if you wasn't already aware of this. Guides on the internet are the thing that make the most ad revenue for all of the different gaming publications. Guides is where the money is at. So
100%.
So if you're stuck on a bit, it is not that difficult to just fucking go online. And even like PlayStation,
but also,
even on PlayStation
isn't it
itself,
better that you don't have to do that though? It's better that you don't have to go online to find the answer, because if you're playing through this game and you don't want to do that, then you're actually able to play through it, and you're not going to have to stop, look something up on the internet. It's one of what, you know, I know it's one of your games of the year, but it's one of what people's main quarrels was with the, oh god, what's the game? The little fox and he's got a sword. Tunic. Yeah, right, exactly. It's one of people's main issues with Tunic is that most of the stuff in that was just fucking incomprehensible. So a lot of the time people are just going, well, I can't figure this out, I'm just going to go online. And that just spoils the gameplay experience. Maybe the ideal middle ground is somewhere between those 2 points, right?
Yes and no. I mean, like, you know, you think of a band and they say, fuck it, we want to release like this thing, and we don't give a fuck what you say. Like, there's no record pressure, there's no record label pressure. Like, this is the thing, this is our true artistic vision. And I'm sure you, as well as I, Jack, have had albums that we've listened to, and it's taken about 50 fucking listens to like finally be like, you know, I get it now. Hey, we like Ocean Size, all right? So,
yes,
actually, you know, even better, Biffy Clyro is a perfect example, right? You listen to fucking any of those first 3 Biffy Clyro albums, and they're a mess in a glorious way, and there's no like compromise whatsoever. It's just like, this is the thing we want to do, and this is our vision. And they're not the most accessible, most approachable albums to go and listen to. You then listen to basically anything in the last 10 years they've done, and it's a lot easier and a lot more accessible. But I mean, you know, obviously this is all subjective, but I think you would be in agreement with me, Jack, that they haven't released anything as compelling as they did with those first 3 albums.
No, but also at the same time, I'm not going into this God of War game looking for Biffy Clyro levels of complexity. The same way that's
fair enough. That is fair enough.
And honestly, that's what it doesn't bug me, because I didn't think God of War, aside from like the like really hard super bosses that you could fight in God of War 2018, there wasn't really too much in that game that was difficult or challenging to the point where you were like, oh, I'm broken, I have no idea how to get out of this situation. It might be a couple of things I googled, but for the most part it was straightforward. And this is the same, and I kind of like that.
Well, I think, well, yeah, I mean, that's part of the issue with me, is that it is more of the same, but it's now got 10 hours added onto it. I think that's a lot of my issue is.
It's a continuation of the story. I think it looks better. Yeah. I think the game feel in general is better as well. I like the fact that Atreus is a little bit older, and you're getting a little bit more development in his character. I think the interactions between all the characters in the game are really well written, and there's depth and joy that comes from a lot of those conversations. And yeah, it is what it is with the puzzles, and it is what it is with the telegraphing things, and it's like, if that's really going to bug you, then yeah, you're going to feel like this whole thing is a slog. And again, completely legitimate. But for me, I'm happy with that. I'm like, okay, cool. It just helps me play this game a little bit more consistently that maybe I wouldn't have that struggle with, and I can just enjoy it and have fun with it. And I'm not looking for it. This is me not looking for a 7.5 minute jazz odyssey. This is me looking for a 3-4 minute rock song that kicks ass I can throw on and then just enjoy. And they do that well here. I think they execute a God of War game in a very, very strong fashion.
I'm not disputing. This is definitely a God of War game. Like there's no way around that.
Yeah, but if you're looking for innovation off the back of the previous one, you're probably not going to get too much of it.
I don't need innovation, but I don't need a game to just hold me by the hand for 30 hours, which is what this is. But you know what? Look, I don't want to shit on your enjoyment of the game. That is not what I'm trying to do here.
And I don't want to shit on you shitting on the game. I think we're in mutual agreement.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
I feel like I had to toss my 2 pence in here because I think it is important that there is a differentiation of views that for some people that is going to be fine and it is going to work, and people might say, oh, it's a baby's game for babies or whatever, but yeah, that's on me. I like it.
Look, I got 9 on my side, and that's all that matters.